So welcome. Welcome to this Divine Love Ambassador podcast with your host, Mary Jo, here with you from Australia. And today I have a very special guest, an old friend from old times in Ireland. Went to college together. And today I'm introducing Danny as an Irish shamanic facilitator. And through the conversation, well, first, welcome, Danny. Great to have you here. Great to have you ready to have this conversation.
Yeah, good day, as you say in Australia, or dia huit, as we'd say in Ireland. God be with you.
Beautiful. So just to give you an idea of what kind of topics we're going to cover in this conversation is we're going to cover death and grief, the impact of travel, marriage and divorce, major surgery, depression, moving into the shamanic path and counseling, and honoring the seasons. So with that, Danny is going to open up this podcast session with opening sacred space. So I'll hand it over to you, Danny.
Okay. So we're going to open sacred space. We're going to first honor the directions, the elements and the seasons. And there'll be some Gaelic words in here as well. But I will translate into English as well. So we're going to go into the north first. Fáilte go dtí an seomra, fáilte go dtí an cearcail. Fáilte an sinsear, fáilte an cailleach. We welcome in the energies of the winds of the north. We welcome in the energies of our ancestors into the circle. We welcome in an cailleach, grandmother earth, she who mothers Mother Earth in the winter months. We connect with the element of earth. We connect with the feminine aspect of the winter solstice that we're currently celebrating in the Northern Hemisphere, and connect with the element of earth. And as we are now in the midwinter, we acknowledge that time that's turning from the dark period from Samhain to now, and the new light coming through, and of course the great Christmas Day, which is just upon us. And we acknowledge the sacred sites of Ireland, particularly Newgrange, and I also honour the sacred sites in Australia, particularly Uluru, and welcome in the energies of the summer solstice from the southern hemisphere through the technology that we have at our disposal. Sha. And to the east, we honour the directions of the east. We call in the winds of the east. Fáilte rovisteach, fáilte go dtí an seomra, fáilte go dtí an cearcail, fáilte Bridget, fáilte Breed. We welcome in the energies of Bridget. We welcome in the energies of springtime, an imbolc, the time in the belly, the time of new birth, the time of new life, springtime of the beginning of February in Ireland. And we acknowledge all that comes true on the element of air. And we acknowledge that everything that comes true on the element of air tonight would help us in our healing path. Sha. To the south, we acknowledge the winds of the south. Fáilte an saora, fáilte go dtí an cearcail, fáilte go dtí an seomra. We welcome in the energies of summer. We welcome into the circle. We welcome in the energies of Antenna, the fire. And we acknowledge the summer solstice that you're having today in Australia. We acknowledge that the masculine element of the summer solstice, that when the life and the earth is in full abundance, in contrast to the winter solstice, when creation is below the earth. We honor those long days of summertime and the heat, and we honor the masculine beauty of the sun. Sha. to the west. We welcome in the energies of the west. Fáilte, fáilte go dtí an cearcail, fáilte go dtí an seomra. Fáilte uisce, fáilte lúnasa. We welcome in the energies of water, the energies of autumn time, the energies of the harvest season. We acknowledge that all comes true on the element of water and Manamach Lir, the god who surrounds our island, Ireland, with the beauty of our sea and our coastline. We acknowledge everything that will come true today on the winds of the west, through the element of water, the season of autumn, and to help us in our healing path tonight. Sha. We honor Mother Earth below us. We honor her great wisdom, her abundance, and give gratitude for all that she provides us in terms of our food, our materials for our shelter, for our homes and our transport, and our fuel. We acknowledge the damage that's been done to the earth, and we acknowledge those who are trying to work with the earth and work with the energies of the earth. And we give gratitude and we bow down in appreciation and of awe and wonder of all that lives on Mother Earth. Sha. The Father Sky above, we look up at the night sky here at the moment, a beautiful starry sky, and we acknowledge the shortest day of the year that will come true tomorrow, and the longest day of the year that you're having now in the Southern Hemisphere. We acknowledge the stars, we acknowledge Grandmother Moon, we acknowledge the solar system, the planets known to and the planets beyond the telescope. We acknowledge the Milky Way and the great wonder and wisdom of creation of the universe that's above us. And we acknowledge ourselves sandwiched between the masculine energy of the sky and the feminine energy of the earth on our journey through our life, in our masculine, feminine journeys. We give gratitude to Father Sky. Sha. And if you just hold your heart and acknowledge your sacred heart, acknowledge your sacred center, call in whatever spirit guides you wish to call in. Sha.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Share just the impact of calling in the 4 directions, just to explain a little bit more of why you do that and what the real underlay, the potency of that proclamation and acknowledgement. I'm very aware of this acknowledgement lately in my own life, just the power of acknowledgement, how you acknowledge the 4 directions, but also acknowledge in the heart. So if you want to just share a little bit more, just to give it a little bit more.
Yeah, so it was obviously the first thing I learned in my training, because it was the first thing you do. So it used to kind of excite me because it was new to me, and it was like, I just found it quite interesting because it was that deep connection to the 4 elements, to the 4 seasons, and it just had an impact on me that, you know, years later I'm still practicing. And it's to honor the work that you're going to walk through in your path. So any of the shamanic events that I work with, we'd always open sacred space, because you're calling in that energy, you're calling in that healing space, because you're bringing people, myself included, of course, on a journey. And it's acknowledging that you're not doing it alone, and that you have all this wisdom around you from the 4 elements, from the 4 seasons, and your ancestors, of course, and those you want to call in, or any of your power animals that you may wish to call in and acknowledge, or any of your angelic guides, or any of your religious deities that you wish to call in. So it's everybody's kind of unique journey. And it was explained to me like that the shamanic spirituality is like an umbrella that kind of sits above them all, because it's the earth. It was the first spirituality that our ancestors did right around the world, and indigenous people, the people of Australia, the famous Aboriginals, you know, were so in tune to the earth, they could even put their ear down on the earth and hear movement kilometers away. They knew where to find, they knew where to source food, they knew how to work with the land, they understood the land. So I think this open sacred space helps to connect back to that, to get back from our busy lives of our technology and our cars and our distractions from screens and all this stuff, and just to go back and realize, no, we're living parts of nature.
Beautiful. Yeah. That expansion of our consciousness from the mental mind realm, isn't it? That's can feel so separate and get us into feeling so isolated and separate. It's that remembrance of this connection, that we're part of the elements and that we can invite them in more consciously to support us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you work with the four elements, particularly fire. Fire is used to, you know, I'll talk about it later as we go on the talk, but fire ceremonies in Ireland, of course, were big. Like Halloween, Samhain was always a big bonfire ceremony, but sacredly that was a huge fire as well. And of course the fire of Ishnok for the beginning of summertime in Bealtaine in May, at the centre of Ireland, that's a massive, massive fire. So they're the two big fire ceremonies. And
what's your understanding? What's your understanding of the significance of both of those?
Well, you had a fire at the beginning of summertime to welcome in that energy, and then that was you know, you were bringing in the excitement of the longer days, the hotter days, and Samhain and Halloween then, of course, was the old Celtic New Year, so it was the time of death, where you know, that's why they dress up in Halloween costumes and things like that, because the ancient people in Ireland, when they celebrated Samhain, that they used to dress up, because that was the time of the veils were at the thinnest between the spirit world and the living world, and people used to dress up to scare away the ghosts, scare away the spirits. Mm. So there's a significance there. And the fire obviously then was, you know, it was the last big fire ceremony. And interestingly enough, what I learned was, you know, in Ireland in the old days, of course, every fire had a house. Every fire had a fireplace in the house. The modern houses now don't have them as much, but thankfully my fire is lighting over there in the corner. And
no fire here. We got the sun in the sky. It's very warm.
Yeah, you got the fire in the sky. So it was interesting that all the houses and homes in Ireland extinguished their fire at Bealtaine and at Samhain. And when the sacred fire would be lit in Ishnok for Bealtaine and the hill of Clochta in Meath for Samhain, all the other hills around that would light their fires, and all the other hills would light their fires, and it would go around the whole island. So from the centre of Ireland, it would go to Donegal, it would go to Antrim, it would go to Wexford, it would go to Kerry, and everybody went to the local fire and brought home an ember and lit it in the heart of their fire. Mm. So there was that deep connection to the fire. I thought that's incredible.
Yeah. Amazing. As a web of connection and communication. And what about the aspect of like cleansing? Like it's very much like that cleansing.
Yeah, cleansing, because you can put intentions into the fire, and that's what I work at when I do my work. We help people to shed what they want to get rid of and to embrace what they want to bring in. So there's two different techniques for that, and both those pieces of paper going into the fire. Yeah. And that's a very sacred thing, because those intentions are private to everybody. And I tell people to, you know, just keep them like bullet points, you know, 3 or 5 is enough. And, you know, and I had people come back to me, like, you know, I was working with some people from America, and they came back to maybe 6 months or a year later, I saw them again. They go, well, all those intentions they put in the fire all came true. I goes, yeah, it works. topics.
Power of intention. Power of intention.
Power of intention, yeah. Yeah, but doing it in a safe space, doing it in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Where you're honoring it.
Yeah. Well,
that's
it's bringing
key.
more intention, isn't it? You know,
yeah. There's no point just going off and just put a piece of paper in the fire now like that and say, no, there has to be heart in it. There has to be intention in it. You have to want it and desire. You either want to get rid of it or you want to bring it in.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a genuineness there, isn't there? That you can't fool the universe kind of thing. You can't fool energy. You can't just say the word.
You might understand it, but you can't fool it. Do your best to understand it, but it's much bigger than our little pea brains.
Yeah. And that's why the power of ceremony and ritual and all these things, you know, that it is like bringing in the, I guess the intentionality, but, you know, the action that follows that intention, because it's like, you know, there's a readiness, I guess, as well. You know, there's a readiness.
Yeah.
When I was running retreats, that's what I would share with people. Like I would, you know, get them to something similar, but like, you know, just same, but different, but writing out on a piece of paper, the intentions of what they were ready to let go of. And one of the things I would share is not because you think you should, you know, or because society tells you, but because you're done with it. Like you're really done with these things. You know, you're ready to let them go. You're like, you've lost passion, you've lost interest, you're done, you know, because that's really what we're ready to put down is like, okay, I'm
and some of it could be old trauma. Like, you know, we mentioned stuff about childhood before.
Yeah.
There's old trauma there. Like, you know, I know people talking to people, say my mother's age, you know, who talk about, they still have trauma from the nuns in school.
Yeah.
You know, they've never got over it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's something there to be fully felt and processed as well. You know, we talked a little bit before we jumped on the recording about, you know, fear or, I guess the duality really. And so to bring them into harmony and unity, you know, that's to me the integration, to be able to feel into completion. You know, what the younger person, I mean, we're kind of going a bit of a different tangent, this whole inner child thing, but you know, like what a 5-year-old couldn't process emotionally, we'll say, or energetically, you know, the 45-year-old can, you know, that way.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, but or the tendency can be to you know, still be re-traumatized by it, by still being fearful to really fully feel whatever that is. And that's where, you know, writing things down and all these tools and, you know, the ceremonies and everything can really help us to you know, move through the resistance as well. And to be supported in it as well, you know, and not be afraid of it, that there is actually a process to move through it, you know, so it's not this evasive kind of thing that we don't have a way to work with it, you know. And I think that's what a lot of what you're sharing. But before we go any further, Danny, what I want to share is, how did Danny get into all this from the guy I knew way back in Sligo in college, us both doing industrial design together for 3 years. How did this guy get into this shamanic journey and training? Yeah, what was the propeller for you that really shifted you into this pathway?
Yeah, and I suppose that's where we go with, you know, the topics that we agreed to discuss. And the first impact I had, of course, was the death of my brother when he was 26. And it was 19 years ago now. And I'll never forget that morning, because I was living in Dublin and ready to go to work. And I got a phone call from my mother, but it wasn't my mother on the phone. It was a local guard. And I was like, why is he ringing me on my mother's phone? And he told me then my brother had passed away, killed in a car crash that morning. So the shock of that obviously was incredible. And then one of my colleagues in work drove me down from Dublin to my hometown in Ross. And of course I walked into a house full of grief, raw grief. And my brother Tony was quite a popular chap around town. He was a DJ and he was a good party head around the town, and he was just a lovely guy who just got on with everybody, and everyone got on with him. And he was a great man for just sorting out conflicts amongst the lads. you know, lads would be fighting, and he'd sort the two of them out. Then later on, he'd sit them down and make them shake hands and that kind of thing. So he had a great way of just bringing people together, and yeah, it was a big shock, and
he was
a huge void left in the family after the course, and my sister was very close to him as well, and she was living at home, and kind of with me in Dublin, it was the rawness of it. Then, like, I was obviously able to take a bit of time off work for it, and you know, I remember every aspect of the funeral. I had so many flashbacks of everything that happened. So my phone's just beeping here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose it was something's going on with my phone. Sorry. And it was just probably that was the big impact that made me think about spirituality. What happened to him? Where did he go? I know he went down into a hole in the ground in a coffin. I know we had all the prayers, and we know we had the funeral and all that stuff. But what happened to him then? Where did he go after that? You know, I know, believing, growing up as an Irish Catholic, that, you know, he's going to ascend to heaven. And
or hell.
Remember looking at the funeral. Remember looking at Christ on the cross in the church, thinking, Jesus has suffered and died on the cross. You know, we have to suffer. We have to hold our cross as well, in our own ways. So it was like, you know, felt that weight. Obviously, the weight of his coffin as well. I thought that was really heavy load. And yeah, I wouldn't be something I looking forward to again having to do if any other family member goes. And then, I suppose, dealing with that grief, the rawness of that, and then what was coming in a few months after that. He died in November, and then my girlfriend at the time, Claudia, who became my wife, we went traveling. We were due to go off in January. And so we went off to New York, and then we went to California, Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, and then Southeast Asia. And I remember just, like, I met a cousin in New York, so I was staying with her and our partner. And, you know, that was good because we were able to kind of connect about old stories and childhood down in Limerick, you know, down my dad's place and where she's from. And yeah, but then I remember being in San Francisco, and I was just in a coffee shop one morning, just staring at the walls, and Claudia asking me, was I okay? And I was like, didn't know where I was. Knew I was in San Francisco, but I didn't know where I was. And just having that rawness, being so far from home as well, and it's been so raw. And so yeah, look, I remember we were doing a lot in terms of traveling. We were packing our days. We were doing a lot of, you know, doing everything you could see. You know, she worked in tourism, so she was very good at organizing, you know, trips and been really yeah, on top of all that kind of stuff. And I just hadn't the head for anything to go, where are we going today? It was just like, she'd take the lead and we'd go off and hire bikes and cycle across the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever we were doing, you know. I remember going to a reggae gig in San Francisco. Actually, that was really cool. that was a buzz in it. And I got a bit of Jamaican weed off a lad, nearly knocked the head off me, like. So I kind of needed that as well. And it was good. And then I remember we went to Fiji, and I was getting into snorkeling for the first time, and we did our first dive in Fiji, and saw two reef sharks. First dive, and we saw two reef sharks. It was just incredible, and the fish were so beautiful. We were just snorkeling around these corals, and I was just excited to see all this abundance of tropical fish, you know, that I've only ever seen in a tank, and now I'm seeing it in the sea. And it's like, and I was like, look at all the fish, Tony, look at all the fish. So I could just feel him with me, you know, and it was just, it was just a journey. And as it progressed, as that year progressed, of course, it was on to New Zealand then after Fiji, and I spent a month on each island. Bought a car in Auckland and drove around and stayed in hostels. And it was great. New Zealand, as you know, you've lived there. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. And so I was really kind of loving all the kind of the indigenous cultures that I was finding as well, you know, because when I was in America, I was in Alcatraz, and the Indians there were trying to get Alcatraz as a base for their culture after the prison closed down. Of course, the American government wouldn't give it to them. So there was all this graffiti up there. And then, so you're kind of touching in with that energy of the Native American Indians. And then, of course, being in Fiji, we had, you know, the welcoming in of the dance while we were there, you know, arriving in these islands, and they're all coming out, and the men and the women are all in their traditional costumes going boola, boola, and welcome you in, and doing their lovely little guitars and real Pacific kind of stuff. So beautiful. And then, of course, New Zealand with the Maoris, you know, connecting into that energy of the haka and energy of the. We went to a hangi meal and had a Maori night like that. And then, of course, when we went to Australia, of course, I got in touch with the Aboriginal spirit, and was really interested in the paintings, really interested. Went to an Aboriginal night up in Queensland as well. And like they lit a fire from sticks. And then, of course, it was up to Southeast Asia. It was into Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And then was back then for Tony's anniversary 10 months later in November. And then so we came home for 2 months again. And then I'd been offered a job with an engineering company in Melbourne. So we went back for a following year. And so the two of us went back for a year in Melbourne. And that was challenging. I was still feeling the grief. I was still obviously feeling I was a long way from home. And I was quite happy in my job, but Claudia wasn't happy in her job. So anyway, we came back to Ireland, and she had a job to come back to Ireland. I didn't. So came back, and then I had a job within about 2 months. And I ended up staying with that company for over 10 years. So I did a lot. We did a lot of traveling as well then, but that was the big trip. You know, we did a lot then. Obviously, I worked in the Middle East as well. Traveled around a bit over there, working in Qatar, working over in the UK, you know, over and back to her place in Germany. We'd spent a lot of time traveling Europe and skiing and Austria and things like that, and going to Spain and France and Turkey and places, Cyprus, and
got around.
So that was it, yeah. And then of course the marriage ended, as relationships sometimes do, and then it was the grief of that, and you know, we sold a house in Dublin, and we kind of had an amicable breakup at the end of it. No, we just agreed on everything, and you know, sold the house and did well selling the house as well. So like that was a bonus because it gave us a few bob, and then I was able to buy the house I'm in now, which I'm very grateful for. And so I remember then feeling the draw to go into this kind of work. I'd come home from Australia, like, you know, years, and I'd heard about Creacon in the Ross, and I knew Creacon because I would have had my grandfather's wake up there. It was a hotel, kind of country hotel. And then it was one day, I think it was actually when I was going through the marriage breakup, and I was at home listening to the local radio, and the guy who owned Creacon was being interviewed on it. And I was going to really kind of connected with that type of the energy that he was doing. And he was a psychotherapist, and he was kind of studying, he was teaching a lot of the Eastern philosophies in India in particular. And so I used to go up there for yoga classes and meditation and sound healing and things like that. And then I kind of found myself being drawn into the native Irish shamanic path. And always, you know, it was like as if I had my my feet in the water, or if I was in the shallow end for all my life. But then now I was going into the deep end, so and I was ready to go into the deep end. And so I started, getting some counselling, and yeah, the other impact was I had major surgery at the same time. So I had been sick with ulcerative colitis, probably since my early mid-20s, and found this, quite a tricky disease to live with, because you just have to go to the toilet quite a lot, and sometimes you just don't have time. Like, I could be sitting here and I'd have to just bolt, and so it was getting bad, and I was on all sorts of medication, and it got to the stage where I had to go in for emergency surgery, and they had to remove my large intestine. So it was
How much of it did they remove?
The whole lot.
Really?
The whole large intestine, yeah.
How do you break that down?
I was on a stoma bag. So I had a stoma bag, and then so you get used to obviously you're losing your last organ of your digestive system. So your small intestine will still produce your waste, but doesn't do the job, obviously, of the large intestine. So it was getting used to that, to having a stoma bag and having to change the stoma bag and all that kind of stuff. So that was quite troublesome.
Did you have to change your diet?
Yeah. They were kind of asking you to go on a bland diet, which I couldn't understand. A real bland diet, like no vegetables, no fruit, no, just plain white rice, plain potatoes, no sauces or gravies or anything like that. Which I just didn't like that diet. I couldn't adapt to it. Yeah. I like my fruit, my vegetables, and my good food. So I still eat quite well. Yeah. So I always kind of ate well. You might remember I was a vegetarian years ago, but not anymore. So it was one thing that just springs to mind. I remember when I was in. Yeah, I'd been getting some counselling at that stage, and I had 3 surgeries over 3 years to sort myself out, and they eventually then made what they call a J pouch out of the small intestine. So they made a kind of a bag inside in the body, and that's kind of like a retainer. It's incredible what they can do, to be honest. But anyway, I was in. So I think it could have been maybe the last surgery that I was in, and I was after doing a shamanic journey on the phone on YouTube with my headphones on, and I'd been guided to the local beach that I know since childhood, and I was kind of panned out on the sand, like arms and legs wide open, and there's a vortex of energy started coming above me in my journey, and it was my brother and my 2 grandfathers, and I could feel them, the 3 of them, going into this vortex of spin, and they were just coming straight down from the heavens right into my heart, healing me. And when I came around, like, the tears were just rolling down my face. And just as I came around, who was standing at the bottom of the bed? Only a South American nun offering communion. Whoa. So gladly took the communion and looked up, and there's Jesus on the cross on the wall. You're kind of going, whoa, the timing is just mind-blowing. Yeah. And I sent that message on to my aunt, who's a nun, and she was my brother's godmother, and she was amazed with it. And she said, she really felt like, your healing has been tough, but you've been chosen to do this work. So kind of that led on, of course, to depression.
Dark night of the soul stuff.
Oh, it's some tough ones, and then what was interesting, because the shamanic path that it went on was kind of broken up into two stages. So there was the medicine spiral, where we connected with our stones, our artifacts that we created in our mala, in our sacred bag, in our bundle. And throughout the medicine spiral, I was absolutely high on life. I mean, like, I was just living in the clouds. I was like beaming. I was after buying my house, and I was like going, this is incredible. I was back out on the bike. Surgery had helped. I could get fit again on the bike, and it was just incredible. And I could really feel the energy of the ancestors, and I was going up to all the sacred sites in County Meath at the the Hill of Tara for summer solstice, Newgrange for winter solstice, and the Hill of Clochta for Samhain and so on. So I was really, really connecting with the land and the energies. And then I went to do the healer spiral, which was the next stage, the advanced stage, where you're going to do one-to-one work with people. And I did that, and and I broken up with a girl that I was going out with. Well, and it could have ended suddenly, and it could have hit me like really hard. And it was like we weren't going out long. That was the weird thing about it. And I was blaming that breakup for this depression. But when I look back on it over time, it was actually still more of the marriage, and I was just putting the hurt onto this woman rather than onto my wife. And I still hadn't got over the fact that the rejection of it. And so I went on an awful depression during the healer spiral. I ended up having to kind of do the course twice because I couldn't finish it. I couldn't finish it the first time. I remember going in for counselling. I was supposed to go in for a weekend session the following day, and my shamanic counsellor, who was guiding me through all this, kind of said, "You're not ready. You're not ready for it. It's up to you," he says, "but how do you feel about it?" And I kind of go, "I'm not ready. I'm not ready for it." So it was like, I remember talking to him about the depression, and he was saying, you need to figure out what's under the bed, what's causing the depression, what's in the back of the wardrobe, kind of thing. Find what's causing it, and go into that space, and then deal with that space. And then I came out of that, but it was incredible, because there was little things like people were saying to me, "Go out on the bike," and I'd be like, yeah, I don't feel like it. Go for a walk. I remember going to the doctor, and I was saying to the doctor, "I'm doing yoga, I'm doing meditation, I'm out on the bike, and I'm all doing all these things." And he kind of looked at me going, "You're doing all the right things." So, and I was going for counselling and all that kind of stuff, and he was like, "You're doing all the right things to try to get out of depression." But there's a story I'm going to tell about people trying to tell me to go back on the bike. And one day I put on my cycling gear, and I went down the hill, and the village here was only about a mile away. And it was just us all downhill. So I just freewheeled down, and I got down as far as the church, and I cycled back up the hill, and I went straight back into bed. And it was like, and then I told that story when I did the big cycle that I did for charity a few years ago. And I did cycle from Mizen to Malin, from Cork to Donegal, for Cycle Against Suicide. And yeah, I never forget that last day going up. I'd never been further north than Letterkenny, and we were going to Malin Head. So, I was on my own, and I had to deal with so much emotion of friends who committed suicide, of dealing with my brother's grief, dealing with everything that I had gone through in my life, and just pushing those pedals, and just going, and blood, sweat, and tears. When I got to Malin Head, I collapsed. Just got up to the top of the hill, and I just fell off the bike like that. And it was like, But that night, when we were having the crack in the hotel, and got up singing music, playing music, and having the crack, myself and the fella from Clare were playing music, and I told everybody that story about me going down the road on the bike and wasn't able to cycle a mile, and had to go home and go to bed. And says, and today, I and all of you have just cycled the length of Ireland. So it's just the journey of it, so you're kind of definitely through the depression if you can do something like that, to push yourself through that. So I thought that depression was there was a lot of learnings in it, and I was willing to listen to the learnings. I was willing to listen to the depths of it, and knowing that come through those depths, that there is brighter days ahead. And, you know, I spent last Saturday down in Waterford searching for a guy who's missing in the river down there since early December, because I'm in the Coast Guard. And one of the things we do in the Coast Guard is search and rescue. And so, you know, it's not the first time we've had to go out looking for somebody in the river. I had to do it in New Ross one time as well. So just a week after I did the cycle against suicide, we were looking for a guy who went into the river. And it's just, it's hard when you know that there's a path that people can walk. And when I was going through the depression, yeah, of course I had suicidal thoughts. Of course, it was an option. It's a way out. But you kind of go, I can't do it. I can't do it to my family. I can't. We've already lost my brother through an accident. No way I can take my own life. But you know that you're stronger. The thing is, when you're depressed, you feel like absolute crap. Nothing is any good. You're useless. You give every negative feeling towards yourself. That is just, it's a spiral that just goes down. And of course, if you mix it with alcohol and drugs as well, you're just going worse. And that's what happens. A lot of people are mixing it with alcohol and drugs, and they're just getting worse. So crawling back out of that, and it is a spiral, and crawling back out of that, that's the hard path. That's the rocky part of the shaman. That's going up the mountains, going down the mountains on your own. And one of the interesting things that was said to me when I was getting the counselling over the marriage, he said to me, when you got married, he said, two of yous walked up a mountain together. Now your marriage is over. You're walking down off that mountain alone. I thought that was really powerful. And I suppose, you know, I think everyone has their own journey. Everybody has their own path. Finding the things that make you happy, that you're content with, are key. Finding hobbies, finding things that you enjoy are key. And my parents were great advice, gave me great advice when I was going through that dark period. And they told me things like, you need to get out. You need to get out of the house. You need to go down to the pub and talk to people, even if you only have 1 or 2 pints. You go down and talk to people. You need to join things in the community. You need to be active. You need to be doing sport. You need to be doing all these things. And at the time, I couldn't do all those things. But a year or two later, I remember saying to both my parents, you know, all those bits of advice you were giving me, I says, now I'm in the community. I'm in the local community here in the group. I'm in the Coast Guard. I'm secretary of my local cycling club. I do my shamanic work. I play music in the pubs. And all the things all kind of come together. And I enjoy my work. And you have to kind of enjoy, you know, the people you work with, the things you're doing every day. And I think it's so important that you become part of the community. And Ireland is great for community. It's a really, really, you know, there's a strong community ethic around the country. Not as strong as it was years ago, but it's still there. And there's people who will do anything for you, you know, particularly, you know, people who know you from childhood and growing up. There's the support there that you'll have from people is incredible. And I think, you know, when you're traveling as well and when you're abroad and in these, you know, countries that are culturally very different to what you've grown up with, you know, you obviously appreciate what you're seeing and what you're learning in other lands, but it makes you feel closer to your own land as well, and your own people and your own ancestors and your own way of life, and your own culture. And I think it's finding that, and I think that's important for every nationality, I think, to go back into that, where you come from. Go back into where your ancestors are from. I think that's key. Because there's a lot of people out there lost and they don't know where their connection is. Luckily, I have it because I know, you know, my mother's family are all, you know, went back in New Ross for generations. My dad's family in Abbeyfield and Limerick went back for generations. So I know I have that strong ancestral link to Ireland. I know there'll be a lot of people, Irish people abroad, particularly, and other nationalities abroad, and they might have lost that. And I think that's key
maybe abroad to disconnect from it.
Yes,
in my own
yes.
case, to speak for those people as well, because I'm one of them, and living abroad for a long time.
You have, yeah.
But there's a reason. Sometimes there's a reason to live on the other side of the world, and a lot of it is this deep healing journey of the heaviness of the ancestry as well, of that energy in order to heal and transform it, and especially the karmic stuff as well. So sometimes the distance is needed, and the contrast of other cultures as well, because as a soul, we're so much more than just one location. We've been.
Of course we are, because I'm sure you've heard of the multiverse as well, and we could be all different.
Yeah. But I get what you're saying.
There's different bodies, being the same soul and different. We could
exactly. But I get what you're saying about the sense of place and belonging, which is tricky, because it's interesting with the awakening journey, because I nearly feel like, and that's probably part of the dark night of the soul as well, that happens, is that you awaken, you feel this, as you described, you had this big awakening, and this experience that really awakened you to the connection of your brother, your two grandfathers. There's something otherworldly, than the regular everyday life, and that sense of connection and support. And then the deep dive, through that relationship or whatever, of having to dive into the shadow, or the resistant part, or the rejection part. And that can feel very lonely. So even though you're talking about the mountains, I nearly see that, like, you're at the mountains, you get the bird's eye view when you're at the top of the mountain, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it, we're connected, and I'm supported, and the ancestry, and you see the web. And then often we go down the mountain and we're in the valley, and we lose sight of that bigger vision of who we truly are as a soul. And then it really is faith. It really is, taking your next breath, taking the next step, and it's really just looking at what's right in front of you, but trusting that there is this greater support, if you like, and guidance. So yeah, it's a bit of a dance, to we talked a little bit before we jumped on, of like how to integrate or harmonize these different facets of who we truly are as the human, as the soul, as consciousness. So yeah, to me, I nearly see like stones that we upturn, and as you said, everybody's on their path, so we can't walk that path for another person. To upturn whatever stones need to be upturned, so that we can, in essence, bring that information forward, or that awareness, or that emotion, or that grief. I mean, it sounds like grief, and the whole idea of grief and the suicide stuff, they're such big topics, but it sounds like the grief really was what cracked you open as well, even though it kind of shocked you open, I guess, as well. But I think that's what happens to a lot of people, that it can be grief.
Yeah. But it was years later before I got into the shamanic work, after my brother died. But then was interesting then was the first journey I did with a shamanic drum, which is this guy here. And that was the introduction to native Irish shamanic work I did. And I had been meditating for years, but this was different. This was way different than anything I'd ever experienced. A deer came through, and my brother came through with the deer. And I was in this journey, and the drum will just bring you on this journey. And when we came through, I kind of had an adolescent deer. The woman beside me had a fawn baby deer, and the woman the other side of me had a big stag, like proper mature deer. So I kind of thought, wow, that deer grew through the trees during that journey. So that was my power animal, and still is. And that drum I just showed is a deer skin. So when that came through, that because I'd been going to mediums and things like that prior to that, and being able to connect with Tony through mediums and through my ancestors, and they were always coming through. So then all of a sudden I could do it myself. I thought, right, I'm going to find out more about this, and off I went.
But didn't it all start with that question, as you said earlier on, because of its death, you got curious, you know, the
Yeah,
body,
yeah. Where did he go?
where did he go? And that's what it begins with. That's the awakening, you know, asking the bigger
Yeah,
questions and being curious. And then on the journey we go.
yeah, yeah. But it's interesting. Just come back to what you're saying about being up on top of that mountain and being in that connection. And I was up there after the medicine spiral. I was right on top. I was just absolutely high on life. And then when I went into that depression, I felt like I had been thrown off that mountain, and I was at the bottom again, and I was looking back up and I go like, I have to climb it again. And you just go. And this time I wasn't flying up, but this time I was having to go the rocky path.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if anything, it's like because I see it like the chakras as well. You know, that it's activating these upper chakras, that remembrance of who we are on a higher level. But then because of the density and those lower chakras, so coming down the mountain, it's like going deeper into clearing out those lower chakras or whatever they're holding. So the self-rejection or the whatever that is that had to be repressed and suppressed or is held there that hadn't been processed emotionally or even acknowledged perhaps, or even not even have the awareness that it's even there, you know. But that's the
Mm.
opportunity. Then it's like the higher up we go, the deeper dive, or the deeper we dive, the higher up we go. So it's like there's it's this in yoga you talk about rooting down to rise up, you know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the deeper we root into the earth, the higher we can rise. But also the higher we rise, the deeper we actually have to root down. You know, otherwise we're not going to be grounded on the earth. We're going to have a tough time on the earth. And that's what I see with some people is they can be, you know, and I have to watch it myself as well, is to in the ethereal or the energetic or in those upper chakras, and then need to, you know, it's definitely on my path to get grounded, to be in this body and grounded with this earth, which is, you know, it's still, I'm a long way from where I was, but it's an important part of the practice to be grounded, to be really rooted, and to be
Yeah.
those uncomfortable, you know, which can be for the spirit body, it can, you know, it's the density, it can feel intense, you know, it can lead to the depression.
It can. And then the depression, of course, as I mentioned, can lead to the drink and the drugs.
Yeah.
And that's why I could see so many people, particularly men, lads I know since growing up and stuff like that, and see the addiction, see the problem, and knowing that they wouldn't come out to any of my events, like it just wouldn't be their thing. But yet they're happy to sit in the pub and take drugs and just get out of it. And like that's fine, for a party and you want to have a good time. But when it's a crutch, when it becomes the crutch,
Yeah.
and they can't survive without it, and alcohol particularly is probably the most problematic one, because you'll have older generations of people who will give out about, say ructions up the town. Oh, sure, they're all on drugs. I says, yeah, but I bet you they were all drinking as well. It's the cocktail of the drink and the drugs. If they were just on drugs, they wouldn't be up there kicking off and causing havoc up the town. It's the alcohol and the mix of the two of them that
Yeah.
causes the problem.
And the other thing I would say as well, you know, just to make it quite simple, it's the intention, going back to what we talked about earlier, the ceremony, the four directions. It's like, what's the intention of going for the alcohol and the drugs? You know, it really came to me very clear many years ago. It's not what we do, it's why we do it. So it's the intention behind it. So if we take alcohol or drugs, and I've had this experience in my own life, you know, I experience things. That's how I know them, as we all do,
So
really.
we all do, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was because, you know, drink for me for many years was really helpful because it got me out of my head and my self-consciousness and guilt and shame and, you know, uncomfortableness in my skin. And I could just relax. I'd say, let my hair down, as we say in Ireland, let our
Yeah,
hair
yeah, yeah,
have some fun and music and dancing. And, you know, it was the
yeah.
happy place growing up. Um, and but then I worked in a bar where I was bored. I got a bit depressed. I was bored in it, and I was working during the day. And then I drank to get out of my head. And it was such a different experience. And so that's what made me realize it's not what you do, it's why you do it. So if we
yeah.
like, so once I was drinking, it was part of my evolution, you could say. Do you know what I mean? Because it was helping me relax and be more in my body and my heart and
Yeah, yeah. And it's
lacking.
so socially acceptable as well.
Yeah, especially in Ireland.
Yeah,
You know, it was
it
very
is.
much.
It's just so, yeah, it's such a
Yeah,
normal thing to just go down to the pub
yeah,
and,
not in every
you know,
country, I must say.
I
It's
know
like,
that, yeah, no,
yeah,
you know, it is, but
that's
it's,
what I've
and
learned being living in New Zealand, is that the cultures can be quite very different in different, you know, or sorry, the perspective on the culture of alcohol, especially. But again,
yeah,
it's, yeah, but you know, but when I did it because I was down and depressed and bored and lost, to get out of my head, like, it was a very different experience. I was a very messy drunk. You know, it was not something, you know, it wasn't just to get merry and jolly and dance and have fun. It was
yeah,
to
yeah,
avoid life. And I think that's the challenge. It's like, and it could be work. It could be anything that people, you know, that we do. It could be food, it could be work, it could be anything. If it's to numb and avoid and you know, try to, you know, distract ourselves, or is it something that's actually enhancing? You know, and I think that's, you know, with the shamanic work or even the plant medicine, or there's so many modalities now, you know, but it's, again, it's like what the intentionality is around it. So I think if people
yeah.
understood.
And I think on a deeper level, and I think this is key to probably, you know, Ireland's problem with alcohol is the trauma that's there from colonization. And of course, the Aboriginals in Australia have a big problem with alcohol and drugs. And, you know, the Native Americans in
They're
India
not
have a big
they're,
problem.
they're not genetically set up for it, like
No, they're not.
Irish.
No, they're not. And it's like, you know, it was introduced into countries like that by the Europeans.
Yeah.
But I think like particularly in Ireland, what happened, of course, during the genocide, it was the famine.
Yeah.
And the trauma that was left in the country from that, and our language was gone, and our culture was being erased, and the people said at the time, because the country was so quiet, a country that was full of song and laughter and joy and creativity was wiped
And
out in the
connection,
space
right?
of few
Connection to the
years.
land, connection to the
And that
elements.
connection, that deep, yeah, and that deep connection, and then of course, you know, it was speak the English language after that, or
Oh,
you're
like the
or you're
fairy
beaten up.
realm, the leprechauns and the
Yeah,
fairies,
yeah.
realms, you know, this
So all that that magic that Ireland is
magic.
famous for, you know, that was taken from us, and of course the country, you know, the population has never even got close to what it was pre-famine. It's getting there now, but it's still a bit off, and it's just and the impact that had around the world. The Irish, of course, Yeats famously said the Irish have gone around the world like the wind. And you know, it was that time when, you know, they were sent off on boats to Australia, to New Zealand, to all over the world, South Africa and America, and so on. And yeah, and you can imagine then, and it's still happening today. There's people having to leave their land because of war, because of religious persecution, because of genocide that's going on as well right there today. So history is repeating itself, and the trauma that gets left there from the violence, from all sorts of damage that's been left there from that,
But
well,
that's
that impact.
going back to what I said earlier, you know, and you obviously traveled, and you know, so sometimes that's why we have to break away to just to kind of unravel some of that trauma, you know, in the awakening journey, especially, you know, so that we can start to really get a bit of space and to start to heal what has been handed down generationally.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's still in the Irish psyche and the Irish build-up in the DNA, and of course we still have a big suicide problem in Ireland. And I just mentioned just last Saturday, we're looking for a guy, you know, and that's too common, and people are talking about it. It's too common, and it's not just, you know, it's a common thing, particularly around males. And it was interesting when I was getting counselling. The counsellor said to me, "What do you think is the biggest cause of male suicide in this country?" And I said to him, "Addiction." And he's like, "No," he said, "the biggest cause of male suicide, and it's not the same for females," he said, "but the biggest cause is relationship breakup.
Mm.
How a man can't handle life, particularly if the woman he loved is gone. And it made me think about all the great songs that men have written for love, you know, and how it impacts a man. Luckily, we didn't have children, so it was a clean break, as I said. And lots of people said to me at the time, "Oh, look, and you didn't have kids," like, and I used to look at, like, my sister has 3 of them, and, you know, friends of mine have them, and I kind of go, "Oh, did I miss the boat?" Like, and you know, but it's just, it's part of the journey, you know. But it's just interesting that the counsellor said that to me, like, the time that's what drives so men to suicide. And he said, like, you know, he did say it to me, because at the time I was going through the surgery, the grief, my brother, the marriage, selling the house, buying a new house, and he was saying to me, "I have people coming into me for just one of those things, Danny. You're coming in with a whole package, and it's all coming to you in a big cluster." And he said to me, "The universe wouldn't be doing this to you if it didn't think you could handle it." And I'm like in bits going, "Oh, I wish the universe could be a bit easier on me." But I could handle it. And at the time I couldn't. I didn't think I could handle it, but obviously I could handle it, because I came out the other side of it. And came out stronger and wiser. My mother told me that. She said, "You're going to come out stronger and wiser out of this." Took a while, but I did. I suppose this will just bring us on to the last thing we want to talk about is honouring the seasons. And we've obviously opened sacred space, and we've talked about it a little bit earlier on. But I just want to kind of bring people through the progression of honouring the seasons in Gaelic Ireland. And so it starts at Samhain, Halloween, and that's the end of October, and that's the beginning of winter time, and that's the end of the harvest season. And so that's the dark period, and now it brings us right up to the winter solstice, which is tomorrow. And tomorrow morning I'm going to get up early, and I'm going up to visit in Cairn, in not too far up in County Kilkenny, which I haven't been before. I used to go up to Newgrange a lot, but I'm not going to travel this year. And Newgrange, of course, is famous for holding the light for the solstice. It comes through the roof box and goes up to Cairn. And yeah, luckily I was there one year when it happened. It was beautiful, it really was. Yeah. So that's where we are now. So we're coming out of that dark period, and it was very dark here. It was like on a dirty day, kind of here, it was getting dark at 3:30 in the afternoon. You know, on a kind of brighter day, it'd be getting dark 4:15, 4:30. So now we're going to start seeing that longer evenings coming in, and that'll bring us up then to Imbolc for the beginning of springtime and the beginning of February, and made famous for Bridget and the Bridget's crosses, of course, that you would remember. And they're still quite, you know, we have a national day off now for Bridget. And at the last couple of years, I was up in Kildare. I was honoured to be asked to be part of the parade. So I was helping a theatre group from Donegal to come down and do these events. And myself and my friend just had to push around a few floats around Kildare town and play lovely spiritual music and things like that. And it's really, really good energy. Yeah. So I was up there the last 2 years for it, and it was a fabulous event.
What do you play, Danny? You said you talk about music. Yeah, what do you play?
Bowron and guitar.
Right. Oh, yeah, I remember the guitar. Yeah.
And bass. But in the pub sessions, I generally played Bowron and a few songs on the guitar. So that kind of brings us through then to spring equinox, which is the midpoint between Imbolc and Bealtaine. And Bealtaine is the beginning of summertime at the beginning of May. So a lot of kind of the European calendar is another month shift down from the Gaelic one. So a lot of people, you know, so people will say, "Oh, summer doesn't begin till the 1st of June." Well, in Ireland it doesn't. It begins the 1st of May, and it ends the end of July. So we have obviously Bealtaine then, and of course the month of May is known as Bealtaine in Gaelic language. And that's, of course, I've been up there for the Hill of Ishnock, and I've been part of the ceremony up there for a few years now, and that's incredible energy. That's the centre of Ireland. That's where Eire is buried, and Eire is where the name Eire, the name came from. So Eire and her two sisters were the founders of the island, and founders of the spirit of the land, so to speak. That's a really, really great festival, and it's packed up there every year for it. Huge energy of the fire, massive energy. And you go up and put in your intentions into the fire and so on like that. And it's incredible to see the amount of children up there now, these events, and the excitement in the children. They were lighting the fire up there last year, and there was a little boy in front of me, and the MC was kind of going, "Will we light the fire? Will we light the fire?" And the young fellow was jumping, "Light the fire, light the fire!" So it was just incredible, and just to get children into that, that this is part of our deep culture. There's more to it, more than just going out and playing hurling and Gaelic football. There's bigger thing going on here, and for kids to see that, I think, is wonderful. And then, of course, that brings us to the summer solstice, which you are now celebrating in the southern hemisphere. And I've often been up there for the Hill of Tara, and of course we've the longest day of the year. It's bright at 5 o'clock in the morning and bright till 11 o'clock at night. And yeah, this year I was at a festival, and I just took some mushrooms and had a really, really good time. Went off on my own, just went wandering. I was in a rave, and I was coming up on them, and I was like, I have to get out of here. I can't handle people. And I left the boys and I said, "See you lads, I'm gone." And I was just get me away from people. And I just walked out into the nature, and I just kept walking and walking and walking. And I saw so many incredible things that night in the sky. I saw what I thought was the first star, but it wasn't. It was a planet. And I was like, "Wow, I've seen the first planet. Wow, I think it's Jupiter." And I felt like I was floating. I felt like I was like a foot off the ground, just walking around. And it was just like everything was buzzing in nature. And I was like, maybe this is how it feels like when you die. That you're just like, woo. I don't know. But that's how I felt. And I just went back to the tent, and the lads met up later on that night. And I remember seeing something coming across the sky before sunset. And I was like, that's not a plane, and that's not a comet. What is that joke? Whatever it was, I don't know, UFO, whatever it was. And it was just come along. And then when it eventually kind of went out of sight, it just shot off like that into the clouds. And I was like, that's not from this planet. I know it was high, but I saw what I saw. And I thought, wow, what an amazing summer solstice event I had this year. And then that kind of brings it in then to...
Oh, that's going to become a lot more commonplace over the next few years.
Yeah. And then it brings you up then to Lunasa, which is as I said, the beginning of harvest season in August. And even though August is still quite hot in Ireland, you get days on the beach, you can still, the farmers are starting to harvest stuff in August. The land is busy. There's a lot of combine harvesters out there. Everything quite busy in the farming community, and you can see nature just starting to turn. And you can get that kind of crisp coldness in the evenings and things like that. And that kind of brings you up then to September, where you've got the autumn equinox, where you've got the equal light and day. This year I was down at a wild retreat in Cape Clear in County Cork, where I go down and speak Oscuelga for the weekend and kind of work on your language, work on living in harmony with nature. And I've been doing a few of these retreats for the last few years, and they're really, really good. And so you go through that, and then it's back to Samhain. And that's the Celtic Wheel, the 8 festivals. And that's what I do when I do my work in Creacon. I honour the seasons. I honour the change of the earth and how it's all working. And it's just, I think it's very important to honour the seasons. Acknowledge the winter we're in now, and see the summer you're in. Acknowledge that connection from northern hemisphere to southern hemisphere, and how in 6 months' time it's going to be the other way.
it's all about
Quite
connection.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And keeping alive in us and awaken us, the connections. You know, as you
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
putting it into the culture. So can I ask you a final question? Since you're wearing a hat and you're wearing a few hats in life, what's it like between the balance of the shaman and the guy who goes off to the office job?
Um,
Do you keep them pretty separate, or is there starting to be more of a merger, or what are you noticing there, I guess?
yeah, I suppose for so many years you were kind of just in that corporate environment, and it wasn't really my thing, but I had to make a living.
Yeah.
So you just go up and go to work. I was always good at going to work. No matter what job I had, I always got up and going to work. And I had times when in jobs where I wasn't happy. I remember, when I was going through a depression and stuff like that, I was just going in, and I've been in that job a long time, and I was just going through the motions, just going in and just doing what I had to do and get out. But you need to be excited about your work. And I left a good company that I worked with in Dublin for 5 years. This year, I really enjoyed that job. Really enjoyed that company. It was an Irish company, and we right cracked. Like, it was just, I was the office DJ. I used to send out an office request, a song request every day. People used to send me in song requests, and I put them into spreadsheet, and I send it out every day. And that was something that we did during COVID lockdown. So everybody knew me, and everybody used to be, So when I did leave, it was very emotional, and I got a great send off. So I joined a company now that a friend of mine, I worked with him in Manchester years ago, and he set up his own engineering consultancy 5 years ago. So he asked me to set up the Irish office. So it's basically just me at home at the moment, and with a view to try to win some work. So to bring the kind of shamanic stuff into that, now I can kind of feel, because I'm my own boss now, and I'm trying to start business from scratch, that I'm going to work a lot more with intention, and try to work on that spirituality, because this is something I'm trying to create from scratch. It's a blank sheet for me, and I'm using all my experience to build that. And hopefully in a year's time, we'll be in a much stronger place than I am now. I have hit all my targets that I set myself from August till now. But it's hitting those targets now that I've set for myself for the next calendar year. And I feel that the shamanic work will help me work on that. And I remember talking to a cousin of mine over in England years ago, and I had good connection with her because she was into her punk music years ago, like I was, and she worked in recruitment for many years. And when I told her I was working doing the shamanic work, she said, "Oh, that's really powerful, that stuff." She kind of like, she knew how strong it was and how it can help you in progressing life, because you're much more comfortable in yourself, that you can deal with whatever comes your way, because you've gone through all those tough times, and you can, and nothing that faze you, and you're afraid of nothing. And if you need to learn something new, you learn something new. If you're handling some bully and it was giving you a load of shit over something, you can handle them. Speak your mind, use your throat chakra, call stuff out, And my friend Dave, who I'm working with now, he left the big company he was with because they wouldn't pay the Indian staff good wages. They wouldn't pay him what he thought they were worth. And he had a big row with somebody. He says, "Oh, so you're charging the client X amount of money for these guys' hours, and you're paying them this much?" And he walked out of the company over it. He was that strong, that, and I kind of respect that. Then he went off and started his own company. And now he's working with all these Indian guys who he worked with before, and he has them all working in India, working for him, paying them a decent wage, looking after them. And it's having that respect, that, that you treat people well.
And that's part of that deeper connection, that he knew his values, that he was willing to lose his job or walk out of it because that was so strong in him.
Yeah, yeah.
rather than the fear of the loss of the job or whatever, So I think that's the part of the, the benefits, if you like, of this awakening, or this greater awakened connection to who we truly are, because it gives us a lot more courage to follow something deeper, a deeper inner compass, rather than, the fear of loss, which again is real.
Yeah, and it's the fear of change as well. Like, and when I was in that job I was in for 10 years, I knew from about 2 years before I left that job that I wanted to leave it. But I said I'd gone through so much upheaval and change at the time, with and I went back to university as well around that time. I went back to do a postgraduate, and I graduated, and I just gave myself a big pat on the back, because I said, "Geez, man, you have to been through some stuff," and then you went off and graduated again, So it was like,
You graduated?
yeah, what's that?
Did you graduate in? What
I did BIM and integrated design.
Okay.
So BIM is like CAD, like 3D CAD and things like that. So building information modeling, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that's kind of what I work in, yeah. So when you can kind of find that strength, that inner strength to pull you through stuff, I think that's where you're.
What's coming up for me there is like your love for your brother, and obviously he was such a big part of your family. It's like, it's nearly like the one of these keys to this cracking us open is this something that we love, that we such a love for, that it's devastating to lose that love, and that could be a doggy, and it could be a business, like I'm just talking about myself with my little doggy who died a couple of years ago, or in 2022, and then moving out of a business that I love, that was the dream, like so much grief came up. But that's what's coming to me. It's like, it's a person, it's a place, whatever it is, but whatever we had such a connection of deep love and deep connection to, that when that moves out of our life, it's like there's a hole there to be filled, and then it can be devastating, but then in that we have to discover what we're going to fill it up with again, to feel whole, that whatever that person or place or animal or whatever it was that was taking up that space, within our hearts, really. I just find I'm always, my head is always thinking of the mechanics of the consciousness and the energy of how it all kind of works. Find it all fascinating. That's why I created this podcast to unravel and to have these conversations, and to shine the light. And another little thing that somebody actually shared on a conversation I had, not in the Divine Love Ambassador podcast, but it was when I did Stories of Awakening back in 2020. This wonderful lady, really, because of course I'm the student, always learning from everybody who comes on as well. But she really shone the light on the depression part of the awakening journey, as also the opportunity that it's really about, I mean, people say the ego death, or, the dissipation of operating from that more ego-centric place within us, that perceives itself as separation, and it's all me, my, that part of that is actually the dissolution of that, and whatever created that, so that we can really operate more in the heart and the soul, and with that deep reverence for everything you've just shared about the elements and the land and life, and not take it for granted.
Yeah, not take it too serious either. That's key as well, to have that joy and laughter and divilment and rogueness and blackguarding, and that we're kind of famous for, and have that joy that you portray, and a bit of laughter and a bit of crack, and that's so important. That laughter is so key, because when you're depressed and laughter is gone from your life, and the smile is gone from your life, and the joy is gone from your life, you look back on it as something, as another you, as something else that you were good at, and say, oh, she used to be right crack down the pub, like, and now you're like, look at you now, you're a fucking sad bastard over there in the corner, you can't get a smile out of you, so it's like, it's why have you gone from one to the other? Why, it's the yin and yang, when you go back to that as well, it is that, it's finding that balance between the two, that you know what it's like to be so joyful and happy and so funny and so witty, and everybody is enjoying being in your company, and then you're in a stage where you're not even comfortable being in your own company.
Yeah.
And you're finding it difficult to sit in your own chair in your own home and do and do normal things like one day I was out, I was so depressed and I couldn't do that, and I was just lying out in the back garden, and it was middle of summer and it was a lovely summer's day and I couldn't do anything. I was lying on and the grass needed to be cut, and eventually I got myself up off the ground and got the lawnmower out and cut the grass, and I had to give myself a big pat on the back afterwards, and I go like, but all I did was cut the grass. I know, but that's what you needed to do. To drag myself up off the grass, I was there for hours.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's the you talk about the wisdom that whoever it was, your parents or whoever said it to you, that you have so much wisdom and compassion. It's like, how could you ever understand that somebody could feel that way if you hadn't gone through it?
Yeah.
To have that compassion for yourself and then to extend that compassion to others. And that's often
but
why
then another day would
experience both sides of the coin, so to speak.
You do. Yeah. But to know that you're not alone there as well, because that day when I got up off the grass, I looked around me and there was feathers all around me. There was white feathers all around me. And then when I went back in, and I couldn't believe it, like, and when I eventually come out and got the lawnmower, they were gone.
Yeah.
There was another day I was up there when I was
and that's opening up to the mystical.
Yeah, it is. It's open up. There was another day I was up. I was when I was raising the money for the Cycle Against Suicide. I was up in Galway busking and had the bower on it. We were up in Shop Street having the crack. Myself and Fergus having the crack, playing music, right? Next minute, all these feathers started to flow up the street. Wow. Honest to God, these feathers started to flow up the street. And I was looking at it, laughing, going like, they're enjoying this just as much as I am.
I just want to also add, just for people who's not from Ireland, I'm aware, and I think Danny is as well, that the crack doesn't always mean what we mean in Ireland. The crack in Ireland means having fun. What are you up to? Yeah. What's the crack? What's the fun? What's the laughter? What have you been up to?
Yeah. CRAIC, it's spelled too,
Yeah. Well, it's been great having the crack with you, Danny, and hearing your story, and getting up to speed really with what really has been your path over these years. Because over the years you get little tidbits of each other's story, but to kind of weave it all together. So thank you for the mushrooms that you took that night that gave you access to the, what was it, inspiration or intuition or guidance to reach out and to give you that little push, maybe that you're ready to have this conversation as well and share your story.
Yeah, no, it's an honor to be here in conversation with you. It really is, and I'm very, very appreciative of the work you're doing and the fact that you offered me this a long time ago, and I said to you at the time I wasn't quite ready for it, and it was like, so that night I kind of, as I said, I had taken a few of nature's little beauties that I picked up a couple of fields up the road. I got so many in about an hour and a half. It was incredible. They're beautiful little things, those mushrooms. They really bring you on such an enlightened journey. And I was actually at a talk about it. A psychotherapist who had studied and done he was a doctor in it, and he was giving a talk on it.
People know what a psilocybin,
it was incredible. The benefits from mushrooms, incredible. Particularly for people in depression. The benefits that can have and the healing that it can have. Obviously, these people are taking them in a controlled environment. I'm just taking them from experience, but it's really, really helpful, and they have to, and I hope it becomes more and more of a thing to help people who are suffering, and it becomes legal. It doesn't. These barriers fall away because it's nature. Yeah. Why is it illegal? It's nature.
And I mean, all these things done again in the right context, bringing the sacredness into it and the intentionality. They're here to, just like herbs, and they're all here to support our to support our well-being.
There's a reason everything is grown on the planet, and mushrooms have their place in it, and plant medicine, of course, ayahuasca, things like that have become quite common. So people will obviously go off to Peru and places like that and do these retreats and things like that now. So that's quite common. I haven't done it myself, and if I get the call on someday, maybe I will. But it's not something I'm drawn towards at the moment. But I've heard a lot of people talking about it on the podcasts and stuff like that. About plant medicine and the sacredness of it and how it can help you heal. And I think that's something that it's if somebody feels drawn to go down that path, it is a natural path. There is a divine sacredness to being high on a natural thing rather than a chemical that's produced in a lab. There's something very, very natural about taking something from the earth, consuming it, and then getting an enlightened experience from it.
It's a different shift of perception,
It is, yeah.
Of who we are. Yeah, different level of our consciousness. Okay, Danny, I think we'll close it up there. Thank you very much. And yeah. So do you have somewhere? How do people connect with you in Ireland or the work that you're doing?
I just work in Creacon Wellness Retreat in New Ross, County Wexford. I work there, and that's where I will do my work to honour the seasons.
You have an email or any way people can contact you? Are you open to people contacting you with any questions or inquiries or?
Yeah, if anybody does. So I'll give you my email address. So it's DANNYAHERN@hotmail.com.
Your name. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Danny. Well, take care.